The frost clung to the windshields of pickup trucks parked outside the small-town airport in Willow Creek, Montana. It was a crisp January morning, the kind where the air bit at your fingertips and the sky glowed a pale, steely blue. Inside the terminal, the hum of fluorescent lights mixed with the chatter of travelers. Families heading to Denver for a ski trip, business folks tapping away on laptops, and locals clutching coffee cups from the diner across the street. The Willow Creek Regional Airport wasn't much, just a single runway and a terminal the size of a high school gym, but it was the lifeline for this tight-knit community of ranchers, teachers, and veterans. At the check-in counter, a line snaked through the velvet ropes. Emily Carter, a young airline clerk with a sharp bob and a sharper attitude, scanned boarding passes with mechanical precision. She was 23, dreaming of a promotion to a bigger hub like Denver, where the lights were brighter and the shifts didn't drag like molasses. Next to her stood Jake, a cocky baggage handler who spent more time flirting with passengers than stacking luggage. The morning rush was in full swing, and the counter was a pressure cooker of impatience. Through the glass doors, an older man shuffled in, his boots scuffing the linoleum floor. His name was Henry Caldwell, though no one here knew it yet. He was in his late 70s, with a weathered face etched by decades of Montana winters. His flannel shirt was faded, his denim jacket patched at the elbows, and his work boots were caked with the red dirt of the ranch he'd called home for 50 years. In his hand was a crumpled boarding pass, printed at the library because Henry didn't trust those fancy phone apps. His eyes, a soft gray, carried a quiet dignity, but also a flicker of exhaustion, like he'd been carrying a weight no one could see. Henry approached the counter, his steps deliberate, and held out his boarding pass. "Morning, miss," he said, his voice low and gravelly, like the rumble of a distant train. "I'm headed to Billings to see my daughter. She's in the hospital. Can you check if my seat's confirmed?" Emily barely glanced up from her screen. She took one look at Henry, his patched jacket, his outdated boarding pass, and her lips curled into a faint smirk. "Sir, this isn't the bus station. You gotta check in online first. You got a smartphone?" Henry's brow furrowed. "Don't got one of those. The library lady printed this for me. Can you just take a look? It's important." Jake, leaning against the counter, snorted. "Come on, Pops, you're holding up the line. This ain't your grandkids' school play. You need a real ticket." A few passengers chuckled, their eyes darting away. The terminal's buzz didn't stop. No one had time to care. Henry's shoulders sagged, but he held his ground. "Please, just check it on your computer. I know it's real. I paid for it fair and square." Emily sighed, snatching the boarding pass. Without even scanning it, she tore it in half, the sound sharp against the terminal's hum. "Sir, this is a no-go. Clear the line, please. Next." Henry froze. The torn pieces of his ticket dangled from his calloused fingers. For a moment, his face went blank, like the wind had been knocked out of him. Then quietly, he nodded, turned, and shuffled toward the exit. The crowd parted, but no one spoke up. They had flights to catch, lives to live. Outside, Henry sat on a bench near the parking lot, the cold seeping through his thin jacket. The neon sign of the diner across the road flickered, casting a soft glow on his face. He didn't look angry, just tired, like a man who'd seen too many battles and lost too many friends. From his pocket, he pulled an old flip phone, its screen scratched and dim. He dialed a number, his voice steady but soft. "Yeah, it's me. I'm at the airport. It's just like we thought. Do what you need to do." He hung up, closed his eyes, and let the cold air fill his lungs. Inside the terminal, chaos erupted. Emily's computer screen flashed red, and a manager's voice crackled over the intercom. "All staff, halt boarding. We've got an issue with flight clearances." Passengers groaned, checking their watches. Jake muttered, "What now? Some VIP throwing a tantrum?" The manager, a harried man named Tom, darted to the counter, his face pale. DGCA just called. Department of Aviation. All flights grounded until further notice. Something about a priority case. The terminal buzzed with confusion. Passengers crowded the counter, demanding answers. But the staff were as lost as they were. Then a black SUV pulled up outside, its tinted windows gleaming under the Montana sun. 3 figures stepped out. A sharply dressed woman in a blazer, a man in a suit with a government badge, and a security officer with a buzz cut. They strode toward the entrance, their faces grim. Henry, still on the bench, stood slowly. He wasn't looking at the SUV. His eyes were fixed on the terminal doors, where Emily had dismissed him minutes ago. As he walked back inside, the crowd parted like a tide. The terminal fell silent. Emily's hands froze on her keyboard. Jake's smirk vanished. Tom, the manager, stammered, "What's going on?" Margaret's voice cut through the tension like a knife. "We're here because of a complaint, a serious one." She turned to Henry, who stood quietly by the counter, his torn boarding pass still in hand. This man was disrespected, his ticket destroyed without verification. "Do you have any idea who he is?" Emily's face drained of color. Jake shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting to the floor. Henry stepped forward, his boots echoing in the hush. From his jacket, he pulled a worn ID card and placed it on the counter. The text was clear. Henry Caldwell, Senior Advisor, Retired, Federal Aviation Administration. Former Chairman, National Aviation Safety Board. Decorated Veteran, U.S. Air Force. The room seemed to hold its breath. Margaret's voice was ice. This man helped write the regulations that keep every plane in this country safe. He's the reason elderly passengers have priority boarding protections. And you tore up his ticket because he didn't look the part? Emily's hands trembled. The torn boarding pass lay on the counter like a guilty verdict. Henry spoke for the first time since returning, his voice steady but heavy with pain. "I didn't want a scene. I've seen enough in my life. Wars, crashes, families torn apart. But today, you didn't just tear my ticket. You tore the respect this country owes every person who walks through these doors." The crowd murmured. A few passengers pulled out their phones, recording the moment. Margaret turned to Tom. "The FAA is launching an immediate review of this airline's operations. Your staff will undergo mandatory sensitivity training, effective today. And those responsible?" She glanced at Emily and Jake. "They're suspended, pending investigation." Tom stammered an apology, but Henry raised a hand. "Don't apologize to me. Apologize to every person you've judged by their clothes or their age. Fix this so no one else has to stand where I stood today." The terminal was a different place now. The neon buzz of the diner sign outside seemed louder, the frost on the windows sharper. Passengers whispered, some searching Henry's name on their phones. What they found stunned them. Henry Caldwell, the man who'd led the FAA through its toughest reforms, who'd pushed for veteran-friendly travel policies, who'd been honored with a congressional medal for his service in Vietnam. A man who'd never flaunted his titles, who'd retired to a quiet ranch in Willow Creek, raising horses and helping at the local VFW hall. As Henry walked toward the gate, a young passenger, a high school kid named Lucas, who'd been watching from the sidelines, approached him. "Mr. Caldwell, why didn't you say who you were? They would have listened." Henry smiled, his eyes crinkling. "Son, I shouldn't have to. Respect isn't owed to titles, it's owed to people. I came here today to see if the system I helped build still had a heart. Now I know it needs a little work." The boarding call for Billings echoed through the terminal. Henry picked up his battered duffel bag, the same one he'd carried in the Air Force decades ago. As he walked to the gate, the crowd parted again, but this time their eyes held something new. Admiration, not indifference. The manager, Tom, stood by the gate, his hands clasped. "Mr. Caldwell, please, let us make this right. We've got a first-class seat for you. A lounge." Henry shook his head. I'll sit with everyone else, Tom. That's where I belong. That's where you see the real America. As he boarded the plane, the terminal stayed quiet. Passengers shared the story on social media. The video of Henry's quiet stand going viral on X and Instagram Reels. By nightfall, Josh's Willow Creek hero was trending. A local news crew caught up with Henry at the Billings Hospital, where he sat by his daughter's bedside. When asked why he'd stayed silent at first, he said, "Sometimes you don't need to shout to be heard. You just need to stand." Back in Willow Creek, the diner buzzed with talk of Henry. The airline issued a public apology, and the FAA mandated new training across all regional airports. Emily and Jake, suspended, enrolled in a community service program at the local Veterans Center, where they learned the stories of men like Henry, stories of sacrifice, resilience, and quiet strength. As the sun set over the Montana plains, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Henry's story lingered. It wasn't just about one man or one airport. It was a reminder that respect isn't a privilege, it's a promise. And sometimes the quietest voices carry the loudest truths.